Alrighty everyone, welcome back. It is now March 30th of 2025, and still to this day, the Walt Disney Company is in pure panic mode over the box office situation related to Snow White 2025, not just limited to the Rachel Zegler and Gal Gadot drama that's been going on both internally and in the public eye, but also associated with the fact that Rachel Zegler just keeps making things worse for the Walt Disney Company. The more that she tries to defend this movie, the more that she tries to spew her agenda onto the general public, it's only making matters worse, not just for Bob Iger, but for whatever is left of the image of Disney as a whole. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to see future updates. You can also follow me at Mike01. I thank you also very much for the great and kind support. So we already know that Bob Iger is beginning the scapegoat, and he's beginning the scapegoat hard and in such a pathetic way, mind you, to the point that it really leaves you scratching your head as to what's really going on with the Disney company right now. You know, we already know that there's a lot of failures ahead of them. We know that Ironheart, that's another thing that we will be talking heavily about this June, is going to be another ratings disaster for the Walt Disney Company, but we'll save that for another time. Focusing on the firings here associated with Snow White as a whole, it recently got worse when it comes to Bob Iger and how he's taking serious action toward the status of this movie in the midst of all the backlash, the reviews that are very much abysmal, mind you, and even the critics that were once trusted, that once shilled, quote-unquote, for the Walt Disney Company. Even they are beginning to turn their back on this company, and that really does tell you something. That is a major telltale that this movie is just garbage. And IMDb, I must add, the rating score on there tells you everything that it has to tell you, by the way, about this movie. But moving onwards here, with the Snow White backlash continuing to worsen at the box office and how it actually keeps going down, one major development going on now involves more to do with the Snow White financial collapse and the firings surrounding Snow White, as the specific metrics are worse than initially thought for the Disney company and for CEO Bob Iger's sake. Now, a crucial update to this entire situation now involves how Bob Iger is already being called to resign by many of the board members after losing an estimated $400 million now, as it turns out, instead of $300 million plus, when factoring in reshoots that were done 3 times over, along with marketing campaign expenses. However, Bob Iger recently engaged in more firings related to Snow White. Now, initially, as we discussed several days ago, Bob Iger had fired the entire marketing team that handled the promotional aspects of the film, along with firing a large number of artists that worked on this movie. However, now, as it turns out, Iger recently decided to fire all the animators that worked on Snow White, which consisted of those that worked on the many animals, the 7 dwarves, and their designs, along with the backgrounds for the film, which I best described as feeling like it's a fever dream. It's very ironic. It's a very weird setting for Snow White, and let's just move on from that. In addition to those firings, Bob Iger also laid off, get this, multiple makeup artists that will, of course, no longer be returning to any other Disney project in the near future after Snow White. This includes those that worked on characters like the Old Hag / the Evil Queen, and many other characters in the film, including Rachel Zegler's Snow White, and among others. To make matters worse for Disney's sake, and just how terrible this makes them look, the voice actors for the 7 dwarves are also now officially fired from the Walt Disney Company, as Iger recently urged the many executives and the board to never have them return for any other Disney feature. Altogether, get this, the number of employees that Iger fired and axed from so far from Snow White is well over 400, when also factoring in some members of the crew that worked on Snow White who are also being laid off. Now, Iger's defense that is being prepared as we speak for the public is that this is a cost-cutting measure and has nothing to do with the box office performance or fear of this film tainting the image of Disney, when in reality, that is exactly what it has to do with. In addition to all of this, Bob Iger also decided to ditch Gal Gadot and never wants her or Zegler to return in any other future films associated with the Walt Disney Company. Now guys, we already knew about Zegler and how she was axed from the Disney company and from several projects, but what's really new here is how they want nothing to do with Gal Gadot at all, and that there were conversations in play for Gal to come back on board with the Disney company. Now, the twist here is that Gal was beginning to walk out on Disney anyway. She wanted nothing to do with them, and that really just goes on to tell you everything related to how Disney is performing as we speak. When you have someone like Gal Gadot that wants nothing to do with Disney, it really does speak volumes as well. Now look, I will say, and I will be honest, Gal's performance in this movie was also quite lackluster when it comes to the evil queen. It still wasn't quite there. But Gal as a person, she's way, way more professional than Rachel Zegler ever will be. She definitely was in the right, not in the wrong. Rachel Zegler was in the wrong by saying what she said on social media, and that's really what it really all comes down to. Now, Iger reportedly is furious over the internal issues between Gal and Rachel, even though Rachel started the entire situation on social media to begin with. However, that drama alone led Iger to also axing Gal Gadot from any other Disney projects that they were in the talks for, even though Gal was preparing to walk away, like I said before, from Disney anyway. Now this shows the extent that Bob Iger was willing to take to scapegoat and head into damage control over this failure of a film that they can't simply walk away from. Much like The Acolyte, alright, we talked about that a lot, this is yet another film that included hundreds of firings of employees associated with the Walt Disney Company that were either in or worked on the film. Now look, it's one thing to get rid of Rachel Zegler and Gal Gadot, it's another thing to go after the marketing team, the makeup artists, the animators, the artists, the voiceover work that was done for the Seven Dwarfs, the actors, the voiceover actors that worked on those characters. Very, very disgusting behavior coming from the Walt Disney Company, and the fact that Bob Iger is already preparing to say that this is a cost-cutting measure, that this is a cost containment plan or strategy that's in play, and nobody's gonna buy that because, look, it's not like thousands upon thousands of people were fired where it would make a significant impact. This is just, 400, maybe 500 maximum employees that were just axed from the Walt Disney Company. It's not going to make that much of a change, per se, when it comes to the financial aspects of the burden that Disney's attached to. This is just nothing more than Disney just scapegoating, getting rid of people that they believe or that they're trying to play the victim card that they were responsible for. When in reality, look, this is all Bob Iger's fault. It's all Rachel Zegler's problem as well. She definitely contributed to the mess that is Snow White. If Bob Iger really wanted to, he could have called this thing off in the early days. I would say right around the second round of reshoots. I think once you got to the second round of reshoots before the third, that's when you really should have called it quits with this movie. There's no doubt about that. Anyway, we know that there's a lot of things going on with this movie. Bob Iger continues to make things worse. We still know that he's on the damage control train. We still know that he continues to just blame everybody else but himself. And really, he absolutely refuses to really just bring up Rachel Zegler. You guys may recall that when he went on the damage control train a couple of days ago, he really doesn't like to bring up Rachel Zegler all that much. That's how bad the damage control is when you don't even want to bring up the name of that actress. You don't even want to remind people that she's in this movie, and that's when you know that Rachel Zegler's career is just not working out too well, especially now that studios are beginning to shift away from her at a very high rate. Anyway, I would like to hear what everyone has to say about all of this below in the comments, and if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel, and I will catch you guys later.